I've had a second overthinking of a Tootsie Roll.
And did you re-listen to it?
I was listening to the playlist on the way somewhere. And then Tootsie Roll came up again. I was like, oh, Tootsie could also refer to a toot as in a fart. So it's like a Tootsie.
Yeah.
And I was like, that at least contextualized more to me.
In my brain, it was like, if I'm writing a song and I want to have a dance with it, like body roll is a thing. What's in it? Like dinner roll, less good. Tootsie Roll, candy, sweet. Okay, that makes sense. We're going to call it this.
Yeah, I was like, I understand that 69 Boys was not trying to intellectualize.
I did legitimately think it was the same artist as Space Jam, which no, all jock jams just had a real basic sound quality to them in like 97.
I hear a whoop coming up, a whoop coming up.
I was driving and it came up and it was on Spotify. So I was like, I need to like triple check that these words are the words that I'm hearing. And yeah, it would just be like a whoop coming up like 7 times.
Whoop, whoop. You're like, you're not wrong. A whoop was coming up.
Wait. I didn't even realize that they were declaring
I feel a whoop coming up.
That they were going to whoop in 5. I didn't even think
and
about that.
And then they go whoop, whoop.
as if they weren't already. I didn't even put that together that they were declaring that they were gonna say whoop.
They were like, we're getting amped.
We should write a jock jam. That sounds so funny.
A whoop's coming up.
No, we should create a jock jam that's about jeans and see if we can get one of the hockey teams to make it there. Like,
I feel my jeans riding up.
I feel
jeans riding up. A joop, a joop,
a joop. Welcome to Fine Pairings. We're not talking about jutes today. I'm Grace.
I'm Claire.
This is a podcast about fan fiction, I promise.
It's about Jean fan fiction.
Jan Jixon, not Jan.
Janfic. Jan Jixon?
I call it, it sounds like a person. That sounds like a realtor. Hi, I'm Jan Jixon, and I'm running for Congress.
You know what? Let's put that person out into the world. And
it's like those pranks where someone changes one thing until someone notices. We take a regular bench thing that's a realtor and just change it slowly to Jan Jixon, but then also turn her into a pair of pants.
Jan Jixon
until somebody notices.
Jan Jixon is now an OC character for a fanfic we'll read in the future.
In 5 years. Anyway, this is so aggressively irrelevant to what the topic of the day is. Oh, okay, anyway, back to reality. Whoop, there goes gravity. We are actually doing the prompt required reading today.
Ooh.
Yes. Something about this prompt was my white whale. I had so many ideas and none of them panned out. And yeah, because I don't know how you found Scarlet Letter originally. It was on fanfiction.net. I don't know how much of a
Oh, you know what? I think after spending a lot of time on AO3, I think I was like, screw this. And I Googled Scarlet Letter fan fiction. And then it was somewhere in there.
I should have Googled. Okay. So I had so many different problems. I'm glad we did this one after a slight break because I needed the time. I've been looking this up for so long. Because one, there's so many different book choices and specifically books that we've referenced on this podcast. I looked up, Lord of the Flies was an obvious one. I couldn't find anything that I haven't read it also, so I couldn't quite grasp. It was
Lord
a lot of
Flies.
alternate endings or a lot of these were next chapter for my English class. So it was 700 words or really, really relevant to the last part of the plot. And I was I don't know what's going on. And you're not doing a good job of explaining what's going on because you assume that I've read the entirety of Lord of the Flies because I'm not your English teacher.
Yes.
And so that was a problem. And then I was okay, what else have we talked about? So I looked up Catcher in the Rye. It's very similar. I had no idea what was going on. I looked up The Crucible because that came up. So I was maybe I'll go to fanfiction.net and look up The Crucible as a tie-in to the last one. And I just could not find anything that I liked.
Sometimes it's hard.
I'm sure they were good. There was a lot that was good, but in my because I'll kind of look at all the tags and before I actually start reading full because obviously I can't read 7,000 word fan fictions or anything. And I would just be kind of scrolling through being okay, can I get a semblance of the plot? And it would be no. have no idea what's going on. Or it would be like a lot of the ones on fanfiction.net were too cracky. And I was like, this isn't like fun.
Yes. No.
So then I remembered a prompt, and I don't remember if it was the exact prompt for the original episode or if it was something else, but I remembered us talking about copyright laws and people being able to publish their Great Gatsby fanfiction.
Oh, yeah.
So then I looked up Great Gatsby fanfiction, and that was where I found my gold.
Yes.
And so that's what we have brought today.
Excellent.
It is a Jay Gatsby, Nick Carraway.
Sick.
Fanfiction.
Yeah.
And that was the majority of what I found on Archive of Our Own. Fanfiction.net got much weirder. It was a lot of, again, these like alternate endings. Like, what if Daisy didn't kill that lady at the end?
Right.
Do you remember the plot of Great Gatsby? I can lay it down for you real fast.
Okay, let me see if I remember.
It's a fucking soap opera. Like,
yeah. So, abridged version of Great Gatsby by Claire.
Yeah.
Nick is just a dude who like is spending the summer with like his rich friends, and then he's just like, wow, rich people really be crazy. That's like most of the plot. And then there's like a part where he's like, wow, rich people also like to cosplay as poor people, because there's that time when they go to like that apartment.
I don't remember that part.
There's like a part where like I don't remember if it's like one of the rich friends, maybe Daisy, has like an apartment like on like like maybe on the scummy side of town. And I think it's like sort of where because this is like maybe where the guy goes to have like an affair with like the one that Daisy I think kills.
Mm-hmm.
Someone is screaming and being like, she doesn't kill him.
I will break it down. Claire's bringing her remembrance in.
Then things fall apart really quickly, and we basically tie up all of like the complicated feelings by just like killing everyone. And so like Daisy kills her husband's mistress, and then somebody kills Jay Gatsby so he can no longer. So the love triangle with Daisy is like now resolved, and Nick is just like there with the lesbian golf player, and they're like, wow, this has been a crazy time.
Yeah.
And that's the end.
That's like the majority of it.
Yeah.
Did you read this in high school?
Yes.
Okay, so did I. And I don't know if it's like in favor because it's shorter or if it's because all this like crazy stuff happens. Like I couldn't tell you why Great Gatsby specifically is used in English class so much, because looking back at the plot, I was like, this is insane. Why? What does this have literary merit, or is this just for fun? And I think it's the latter. But yeah, you pretty much got it. Nick is Daisy's cousin, I think. So he's coming to like stay with them.
Yep.
They are old money rich.
Yes.
Gatsby is
East
new money
Egg or
rich.
whatever.
So he's flaunting it for the most part. And there's a lot of like, he's built the mystique of like, how did he get all this money and why is he throwing all these lavish parties every weekend in his giant house? But then, then we find out Gatsby's single, Daisy's married. Both of them are cheating on their spouses, basically. But also, like, at some point, what was it? It was that.
Because I think everyone's having an affair.
Literally everyone's having an affair. Because I was like reading through this like paragraph that was like, so Gatsby's in love with Daisy and Daisy's married to whoever. And then he is also having an affair with this woman. And then this woman's also married. So it's like, why? This is so complicated.
Yeah, because she's like, I think she's married to like a car repairman.
Sure.
And then maybe does the car repairman, is he the one who shoots?
Yeah.
Gatsby?
Yeah. So then basically like everybody's having all these affairs. And yet they're all still like hanging out with each other because like social circle stuff is important when you're rich. So like they're also their friends. Mm-hmm. I gotta reread this book. It's on my list. So at the very end, I'm gonna get this half wrong. Gatsby has like a really garish car.
Yes.
And he and Daisy get into the car to go
into the
to go get somebody or tell somebody something. And on the way, that car where Daisy is driving hits her lover's wife.
Yes.
And then Gatsby has to like take the fall or something like that. Or like it's supposed to be someone else because it's a very noticeable car. And then, they end up coming back and this mistress's husband ends up shooting Gatsby and himself. So everyone just kind of dies. And then Nick's like, wow, what a crazy summer.
He was
there for straight up like a summer.
Yeah, right. It's a very Greek tragedy.
Yeah, or a soap opera.
Yeah.
We are reading a Great Gatsby fan fiction, and it is by ConvenientAlias, who I could not get a hold of. This was written, I believe, in like 2016, which is like when they joined Archive of Our Own. They still write, so I was hoping that I could get in touch with them, but they never got back to me. But they write for a huge swath of fandoms and have been writing a lot since 2016. So good on them. Nice. If you like this, but you want a new fandom, or if I think they have like 20 Great Gatsby fan fictions. So, go head out over there, hang out, write comments if you like this. Specifically, Phantom of the Opera was their top one. And I was like, Interessante. And then Sense8, which is a TV show that I love, but are not at all related to each other. Wildly different.
Are you sure you're not the author of
this? A classic book, a musical, and a Netflix like sci-fi show, which is not all like there's straight up like maybe 30 fandoms on this list of things they've written. But let's introduce our drink first. So I was fairly certain that they drank a lot of champagne in Great Gatsby and that they just drank in general a lot. I think there was even a mention of like gin and tonics and gin Rickies. Gin was very big. But I looked up like, Great Gatsby cocktails or whatever to see like what else there was. And there's just a cocktail called the Great Gatsby. So that's what this is. Completely unaltered. Because I had never tried one before. And I was like, well, that sounds great. It's all stuff I like. It's 1 part vodka, 1 part Lillet Blanc, and 2 parts grapefruit juice.
Oh.
I know. Real simple.
Yeah.
No gin.
And I love a Lillet Blanc. So let's bottoms up.
Ooh.
That's refreshing.
That's surprisingly good for how much alcohol is in this. And I was like, I couldn't remember what base liquor Lillet Blanc paired with. So I was like, vodka Lillet Blanc sounds right. But it's also like a full shot of vodka and a full shot of Lillet Blanc. So that could be a little overpowering. It's not, though.
No.
It's really nice. It does feel a little prohibition-y, though.
It's good.
I didn't know Lillet Blanc was that old. Like, it makes sense. I just didn't really think about it. It might not actually. It's probably not from the 20s. I don't know when this drink was made. I could look it up. Wait, let me look quick.
Turns out this is like Great Gatsby Cocktail from the 2010 movie The Great Gatsby starring Leonardo DiCaprio.
It does not say when this was made. It was made in the UK though. I don't know why.
How old is Lillet? Wow, every single word is spelled wrong. Lillet Company has been producing aromatized and fortified aperitif wines since 1887.
Oh, so they could totally drink this in the 20s.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Right.
It's an aperitif. What's it made out of? Do you remember?
These liquors are usually citrus-based, made of orange peels from Morocco and Spain.
Fancy.
And their products made of 85% wine from the Bordeaux region and 15% macerated liqueurs.
Nice.
And that has been Cocktail Corner with Claire.
Great. We should learn things about.
We're trying to learn.
We always sound. I remember because we were at Claire's birthday party, which was incredibly delayed. It's not Claire's birthday anymore.
Or is it?
And we sounded like we knew so many things about cocktails when in fact we do not.
It's that I can throw people off. I have talked to some of my coworkers who are way into cocktails, and then it's I know just enough to, I'm going to say, disappoint people.
Yeah.
And that they get really excited because they're I've never even heard of someone else who's even heard of Lillet Blanc.
Right.
And then I'm like, yeah, it's super good and herbally and blah, 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 blah.
And I know what it's made of.
And then they're like, have you had all of these things that Josie has 100% heard of, but I have not?
Right.
And then I'll be like, no.
Or I had heard of a Negroni Spagliato and knew exactly what it was, but I don't know anything else. I have very specific pockets, and
correct.
That's it.
This is how I throw off. One of my coworkers the other day approached my desk and he said, Claire, you know lots of things. And then he just had a question about printing a large piece of art.
And I was wrong. You could,
and I did know the answer.
At least figure out how to do that.
Correct. And I do know how to do that.
Nice.
But I was I simultaneously love this superlative you have given me, but also I know that's fundamentally untrue because I only know deep information on singular points of interest.
All right. So this is a fic called Steak, Cabernet, and the Blindingly Obvious.
Ooh.
By ConvenientAlias. I'm not going to read the quote from the summary, but the summary is the one where Gatsby has been whining and dining Nick for weeks, and Nick comes to the logical conclusion, which is not actually the correct conclusion. Or is it?
Oh. With Prosecco in it.
With Prosecco in it. Cabernet with Prosecco in it? No, don't do that. Well, actually, no, never mind. Don't do that. Maybe. If you want like a sparkling rosé on the rocks. Not in that it's on ice, but in a questionable way.
It's on thin ice.
Thin ice. After thinking it over for a bit, Gatsby decided it might be better not to have Jordan make the request for him. Jordan is the lesbian.
Oh, yeah, the
golf
player.
Yeah. After all, it was a rather large request to make of Nick. Nick was a good man of proper morals. He never got drunk at any of Gatsby's parties, never ogled any of the ladies, keeping his eyes to himself, even in the case of his own girlfriend, Jordan. And Gatsby wasn't sure he'd even cursed in Gatsby's presence.
Oh, you're right. I think Daisy tried to set up Jordan and Nick.
But they were bros the whole time.
Yeah, they were like, it was.
Do you want to date? Do you want to date? No.
Yeah, and I remember like reading different analyses that was like they were like a beard couple, like in that they were like Nick's clearly into Gatsby and Jordan's clearly into Daisy, and you're like, okay.
Well, or like, I mean, from what I remember, I feel like male-female friendships were not as scandalous in the 20s because of everything else that was going on.
Yeah, probably.
Like it was just kind of a swing in time. Moreover, he wasn't entirely sure Nick approved of him even now. Nick had come visiting several times, of course. They had gone up in the hydroplane together. Nick had attended at least 3 parties. They'd spoken of trivialities, politics, philosophy, current events, etc. He told Nick his entire, admittedly fake, backstory. And despite that, he still got the sense that Nick still wasn't altogether comfortable with him. Oh yeah, do you remember Gatsby was, I don't remember how he said he got his money. It had something to do with the war. And so everyone was like, no, I'm pretty sure he's a bootlegger.
That sounds,
and then he was.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Okay,
Spoilers for The Great Gatsby.
You can listen to this episode instead of reading Cliff Notes, kids.
I wouldn't write your essay on it, though.
Can you, Grace, as a teacher, how would you feel if you were like...
If one of my kids read a book outside of school, I would be floored. I could barely get them to read in class when I'm staring at them.
That's fair.
But it's a different class. We're not reading The Great Gatsby. Absolutely not. Okay. And despite that, he still got the sense that Nick still wasn't altogether comfortable with him. Perhaps it was in the fact that although he laughed lightly at Gatsby's jokes, he always seemed a bit on edge around Gatsby. Perhaps it was the fact that sometimes Gatsby would turn around and find Nick staring intently at him, almost suspiciously, and Nick would immediately lower his eyes and pretend nothing had happened. So with Nick being such a decent man and being so unimpressed with Gatsby himself, which was a bit distressing since seeing as Gatsby lived to impress, it was perhaps not the best idea to count on Jordan to present the subject to Nick. Although Nick clearly had a better opinion of her than of Gatsby. The two were going together after all. These are all in like parentheses to be like, and his girlfriend. It still was not straightforward to depend on a woman to make a request, and Nick was a straightforward man. He would appreciate that. So instead of sending Nick home after telling him to call Jordan, as he originally planned, speaking of Daisy was still so painful for him. He kept Nick with him a bit longer, and in the heat of the evening, he brought Nick home to have dinner at his own place. And Nick, although his house was just across the way, and he could easily have simply gone home, did not. Gatsby took this as a good sign. So Gatsby is in love with Daisy, as we all know, as we've read 200 pages about what is happening. Because I feel like with the parentheses, it's hard to be like, literally nothing's happened yet. It's because nothing's happened yet. But Gatsby is hoping to like wine and dine Nick in order to be like, hey, will you like put in a good word for me with Daisy?
Yes. Oh, and Nick's about to be like,
sorry. For me?
These flowers are for me.
An orange peanut? For me? You're not going to get that reference.
I do know.
Almost fell off the whole couch. I forgot that wasn't an arm, and this is not a couch. It's a mattress.
And also, I do know the reference of an orange peanut for me.
You do? Because I say it to Leaf all the time, and they still don't know what I'm talking about, even though I've showed them the clip like 4 times.
Yeah, it's from Bad Lip Reading NFL.
Okay.
We're getting waffles.
We're getting waffles. No, I say that all the time. No one ever knows what it's from. Yeah, if you're from the 2010s and you watch Bad Lip Dubs, it's from that. Anyway, yeah, Nick's gonna be like, for me, an orange peanut. I think I'm like so afraid I'm gonna fall off this mattress now. I didn't even perceive that was an option. Okay, I'm on a nugget.
We'll be like, pause for fall.
Pause for me falling off of this. It's not a couch.
Off of this.
You've disguised it as a couch so well. I forgot this was not an arm.
For the listeners, Grace is sitting upon a bed frame with a box spring and the top piece of a nugget.
and many pillows on the back that look like the back part of a couch. And also I'm resting on a triangle nugget, which is like arm-shaped. Arm of a couch. And I'm just fully leaning on it.
It's moments like this where it was like, earlier today, I was like, someday I'll be able to afford a real couch. And maybe that'll be sad. My little bunk couch setup is going to be gone.
And maybe I won't fall to my death.
And just watching you now, it's like, all good things must come to an end.
Or just, it's fine. It's fine the way it is. I fall off of regular couches all the time. Like, it's not, you're not special. Okay. He took utmost care with the presentation. The dinner was steak, asparagus, and potatoes served with a red Cabernet that Nick only drank in sips, and Gatsby tried to drink as slowly as possible. The table was lit with only a few candles, which Gatsby hoped would set the mood as serious. Not romantic.
Not romantic.
Not a couple of candles. Not a candle at dinner for my friend. It's also the 20s, so like they probably don't have like lights, but like
This is a business meeting.
But like I want it to be nice and dim to show how serious I am.
The lack of light leads to
us thinking really seriously about each other as comrades. Nick seemed to be slightly on edge, but not in a particularly bad way. He smiled openly at Gatsby. It was a smile Gatsby had seen before, directed at many a party guest. A trustworthy smile, devoid of judgment. Come, it said, tell me everything. Let me take on your burdens. All I want is to help. Gatsby cleared his throat. He paused, unsure of how to begin. Perhaps Jordan would have done a better job after all. Do you have something to say, Gatsby? Nick said gently. Gatsby nodded. Somehow he couldn't force the words out of his throat. Nick smiled and raised his eyebrows. Wolfsheim isn't as bad as he seems, really, Gatsby said at last. I know he can come off a little strong, old sport, but really he means well, and he's a good man to know. I don't know what this is. I don't remember who Wolfsheim is. He'd thought Wolfsheim would come across as impressive, would make a good impression. He'd always made a strong impression on Gatsby's underworld contacts. But perhaps that was the difference. Nick was an upstanding man, and the things that would impress him were rather different. But Nick was still smiling. You don't need to apologize for him. It was nice meeting one of your friends. Friends? Gatsby said. He didn't really think of Wolfsheim that way. They were business connections, and Wolfsheim could be very helpful, but they weren't exactly friends. I suppose you could call him that. If it came down to it,
and Gatsby's sitting there being like, your boyfriend? Wolfheim?
No, Gatsby's saying like, I think Gatsby's trying to impress him. And now he's like, am I doing a bad job? He's just like internalized. He's just like really overthinking everything he's saying. First dates, I get it.
You overthink every little thing.
Every little thing you say is like, am I putting my foot in my whole mouth?
Oh, wait. I'm also remembering another plot of Gatsby. Didn't Gatsby, like, that's not his original name. It's like how in Mad Men, he stole the name of someone who like died in combat or something.
That sounds right. I can't confirm or deny. I have not reread this book yet.
Yeah, it's been it's been almost a decade and a half since I was
gonna say it's maybe been 15 years. Maybe this feels like a sophomore college or sophomore high school.
Yeah, it was like
sort of a
wild
of a thing. Oh yeah, I also looked up. I forgot I looked up fan fiction for the Grapes of Wrath because that's all I can remember having read in high school. And Atlas Shrugged. That one was bad. Don't look up. It's incredibly stupid.
I did read.
Don't look up fan fiction for anything Iran has done.
I did read Grapes of Wrath. I did not read Atlas Shrugged. I would have also looked up A Raisin in the Sun or something.
Ooh, actually, like that. Oh, that was a play though.
Yeah.
And The Crucible's a play, so that got me kind of different results. But the only thing I can remember from the Grapes of Wrath,
The Eyes Are Watching God.
Oh, I didn't
that one
read
was
that
already an odd, strange.
1984
book.
Is when I should have looked up. That seems like it would get weird. Maybe I'll do that later today. Anyway, did you read Grapes of Wrath?
I did.
Do you remember what the only thing that I remember from the Grapes of Wrath
is that she's breastfeeding that dude
at the end. Breastfeeds that dude at the end. And that was what some of the fanfic was about, because I think that's the only plot point that anybody cares about, because it's so baffling at the end.
It's like the whole book is like there's dust everywhere, and now I'm
breastfeeding
a man.
And now I have breast milk and this man has died. And he's like an old man, isn't he? Like he's like that. Like it's not at all in the sexy way. It's just a weird
she's
tuck and roll of
she's having like a I can be useful moment.
Yeah.
I think I remember in our English class we had to dissect why she has her weird Jim stares at the camera moment.
Yeah, because it's baffling.
She smiles and you're like, ugh.
This man's just gonna suck on your whole titty to not die. Weird reaction, dude. Okay, anyway. That's why I didn't read it because it was too long. So I was like, this is going to be too long for the podcast. But it was like a Ray Ren fanfic where he has to breastfeed. And I didn't need to know more. It's like I get where we're going. Okay, anyway. Actually, this is perfectly normal fan fiction that is not about breastfeeding a man to save his life. Stay in school. If it came down to it, he didn't really have that many friends. This is Gatsby talking about this. Oh, because, yeah, he doesn't have any friends because he's lying about his life and most of his friends are like bootleggers that he can't talk about.
You can't tell you.
It's hard to make friends when you're a liar in the 20s.
When all of your friends are criminals, you can't really be like, and I'm having a hard time in my life.
Yeah.
And they're like, my dude,
you just need to pay me for this shipment of gin or whatever.
Yeah, and they're like, you can't tell me your first name, let alone your life's problems.
Right? You can't even tell me your actual backstory. Wow. Tough life that you've concocted for yourself.
Don't do crimes, kids. It just leads to sadness.
Just stay in school.
Make friends. Stay in school.
Most of his acquaintances either were with him for business reasons or because they loved to squander his wealth and enjoy his parties. But Nick hadn't even let Gatsby pay for lunch and drinks today. Wait, I thought this was at his house. Maybe it's not. He always seemed more interested in Gatsby than the alcohol or music at the parties, and if he had any idea what Gatsby did for business, at least he never brought it up. You're a good friend to me, Nick, Gatsby said, meeting Nick's eyes, so open, so kind. I have less than you'd think, Nick nodded silently. You're a good man. I'm glad I've met you. Really, Gatsby said. Nick was the kind of man Gatsby had always imagined New York was full of, before reality proved him wrong. Not realty. That doesn't make sense.
Jan Jixon,
New York real estate agent. It's like an Erin Brockovich where she's like an 80s up and coming like businesswoman. So she has anyway. Okay, you're a good man. I'm glad I met you. Really, Gatsby said. Nick was the kind of man Gatsby had always imagined New York was full of before reality proved him wrong. I don't want to ask anything more from you. Please, Nick said. His voice was unexpectedly rough. If it's you can ask for anything you want. Gatsby's fists clenched. You're kind, old sport. I just don't know how. It's all right, Nick said. He stood up. I already know what you want. Gatsby froze. Miss Baker told you? Nick laughed a little awkwardly. She didn't have to. It was a little obvious. It was? Well, yes. Gatsby smiled stiffly. He had been prepared to give a long speech in preparation for requesting Nick's assistance in seeing Daisy. Oh, yeah, he never, met Daisy. He just was throwing these parties in hopes that she would, come over one day.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So we're in that part of the book where he hasn't met Daisy to, flirt with her.
And he's, looking at a green light.
Yeah, he's just, arms wide open looking at a green light.
And he's like, the green light means go.
That was in the this 2-paragraph summary I read that he, one day is just, arms wide open on a lake looking at a green light.
Arms wide open.
Yeah, I was like, okay. I don't remember that part, but sure.
I'll show you love. I'll show you
everything. It's not a Christian song, you guys. It's just from a Christian band.
I'm going to say it's about the Great Gatsby now.
It's about, gave me the green light. He just wants that green light. Okay, anyway.
Which also there's a Jonas Brothers song called Green Light.
There's 4 songs called Green Light. There's Lord.
About, yeah.
Give me the green light. Give me this one night. I'm ready to go right now. I don't know who sings that.
Game of Thrones. Sorry. Great Gatsby.
No.
It's all about Great Gatsby.
It was Flow Rider or somebody. I don't think
No. I'm saying that I'm choosing to be Lord and Jonas Brothers and probably Pitbull or everyone is writing about the Great Gatsby, actually.
Yeah. This is what they wrote for their English class. It's a song about a green light.
I'm sorry. Continue.
Okay, I'm done. Anyway. So Gatsby's like, oh my God, you knew? And Nick goes, she didn't have to. It was a little obvious. It was? Well, yes. Gatsby smiled stiffly. He had been prepared to give a long speech in preparation for requesting Nick's assistance in seeing Daisy. He had been willing to go into poetry to declare his love for Daisy and convince Nick of his sincerity, and now Nick already knew? At least he didn't seem to be angry. You don't need to worry, Nick said. Honestly, it's flattering. Gatsby flushed. His attention's flattering to Daisy? As if she didn't have 1,000 other admirers, even if they were less devoted. But that was still far from the point. Well, old sport, it's not exactly socially acceptable. I mean, I know it doesn't look like something a gentleman would. You're an honest man, Gatsby, Nick said earnestly. He walked over to Gatsby's side and gently laid a hand on his shoulder. Something as simple as this could never change my mind. And society isn't always right, especially when it comes to love.
About married women.
Yeah. Can you put in a good word with your married cousin? No. I just met you like 2 weeks ago. You seem nice, but... Please, Gatsby said. I swear my intentions are still honorable. Nick smiled. I believe there is honor in love itself. And to confess that kind of love, one must be very brave. Brave? Gatsby sputtered. Well...
It is socially looked down upon to court after married women.
For a really good reason. Nick bent down, his face very close to Gatsby's now.
Uh-oh.
You are a good man, Gatsby.
90-10.
With a single hand, he cupped Gatsby's chin.
Uh-oh.
I love you too.
And then, I saw it coming.
And then Nick's lips were pressed against Gatsby's, and Gatsby's brain pretty much shorted out.
No, my friend, 90-10. 90-10.
It was not.
You can't do the whole...
He thought he was like 50-50.
He thought he had already 90'd
We're both confessing our love.
He's like, you made this romantic dinner. That's the 90.
Truly, yes. Like, that's at least a 20 right there. There are only 4 candles on this table. I can barely see you. We're looking at each other.
As
You're looking at me,
friends.
I'm looking at you. We both know what's going on here. Come on, buddy.
No.
Come on, old sport.
Come on, old sport.
It was not that no one had ever tried to kiss Gatsby before. At many of his parties, there had been attempts from young women, and yes, occasionally young men. Gatsby had carefully avoided all such attempts with help from his assistants, and made notes to avoid all the attempters in the future. And it had been years since anyone had actually succeeded in kissing him. And then there was the not insignificant fact that the person kissing him was Nick. Nick, the gentle soul who rarely ventured to speak to strangers first, and certainly who was never aggressive with them. Nick, who always looked on Gatsby's extravagance with a hint of exasperation and never indulged too much at Gatsby's parties. He was not the sort to kiss anyone out of the blue, especially not another man. He was also Daisy's cousin. And Daisy. Gatsby gasped slightly, and Nick leaned away, his lips finally detaching themselves from Gatsby's mouth. He frowned with concern, and Gatsby tried to gather his thoughts back together from where the kiss had scattered them. He sputtered. I'm not sure you understand, old sport. Nick squeezed his arm. You're flustered. I moved too fast for you. A smile quirked at his lips, which a minute ago had been kissing Gatsby. Maybe you're even less experienced than I thought. Gatsby whimpered.
I'm not sure you understand, old sport.
The smile on Nick's face disappeared. Gravely, he said, I'm sorry. Perhaps I did misunderstand. You didn't want me to kiss you? Gatsby was on the verge of saying no, but somehow he couldn't get the word out of his mouth. Instead, he just made an awkward grunting noise. Grunting is awkward, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And well, since I don't know his feelings, it's hard for me to put the right emotive.
Well, and also he's so, like, I remember thinking that Gatsby was so old because he said old sport. And I was like, no one under the age of 70 would say that. So Gatsby must be old.
And I think it's just that he doesn't know rich people don't say old sport.
No. Oh, and that was the thing I forgot, was that there was this weird, like, new money, old money thing of, like, even outside of Daisy being married, Gatsby was like, frivolous new money. And she was like, quiet, I'm gonna pretend to be poor old money.
Yeah. At the end, she's
gotta read this book.
Yeah, at the end, she's like, you know what? I would rather repair things with my cheating, philandering husband than be with you. Because at least he's rich in an old money way.
You're doing a lot.
And you're doing a lot.
You're really Donald Trumping this whole
you gotta
this whole experience.
You gotta stop.
Gatsby was on the verge of saying no, but somehow he couldn't get the words out of his mouth. Instead, he just made an awkward grunting noise. It sounded awful, and he had to blush. Nothing about this evening was going according to plan. Do you want me to kiss you again? Nick asked. Or should I stay back? You want to do that again? Gatsby blurted out. Yes, Nick said. Only if you want to. Of course he didn't. He should only want to kiss Daisy. Daisy was his dream.
Kissing Miss Daisy.
You can't do that. He's driving a taxi. It's dangerous. That's not a book, right? Yes, it is.
It's a movie, Driving Miss Daisy.
But wasn't it based on a book?
Probably. I'm not cultured enough to know.
Of course he didn't. He should only want to kiss Daisy. Daisy was his dream. The one for whom he'd made a fortune.
Daisy is who I want. Daisy is where my loyalties lie.
And that green light, damn it. I love 2 things in this world. I love 3 things in this world. It is Daisy, that green light, and my own self.
Not Nick Carraway, your friend.
Life I have weaved. No room for Nick Carraway. Not in this heart.
I refuse.
I am full of green light and Daisy. And myself.
Good.
Anyway, Daisy was his dream, the one for whom he'd made a fortune. Built a house like a castle and thrown parties every weekend, hoping for only a glimmer of her attention. He couldn't want to be with anyone else, to kiss anyone else. Certainly he couldn't want to kiss Nick, who had only showed up in Gatsby's life a couple weeks ago, who was a man. Do you want to? Nick repeated. Gatsby cleared his throat. I'm afraid I'm rather out of practice, he said apologetically. That's fine, said Nick encouragingly. You'll do fine. You know, I've never really kissed a man before to begin with, Gatsby said. I don't really know how. It's no different from kissing a woman, Nick said, except you'll be kissing me. There was something rather appealing about kissing Nick, Gatsby supposed. He was a very good-looking man, as Gatsby had always thought. Jordan Baker was a lucky woman, which was a good point. What about Miss Baker? He asked. Jordan is nothing to me, Nick said.
She's a golfer.
Friend.
She's
nothing
a golfer.
Else. She's a wink golfer.
You know
I don't think she's wink interested in me as a man wink. Perhaps it was a good thing Gatsby hadn't told Jordan to deliver his request then. Although, Gatsby thought helplessly, she at least couldn't have messed things up any worse than this. Except, as bad of a mess as it seemed to be, Gatsby found himself rather enjoying it. Nick was not at all bad at kissing, and the way he looked at Gatsby was rather the way Gatsby had always wanted Daisy to look at him, even though she'd never had. This can't be a good idea, he said. And yet you want it, Nick said quietly. You invited me over tonight, didn't you? Yes, but... Objections balanced on the tip of Gatsby's tongue. Yes, but not for kissing. Yes, but he had been going to ask about Daisy. Yes, but Gatsby was in love with someone else, really, and he certainly didn't like men, and Nick had simply misunderstood. I suppose I did, he said. He stepped closer to Nick, his throat tight with anticipation. Well, maybe it's not such a bad idea. It's a terrible idea, Nick said cheerfully. Let's do it anyway. As it turned out, Nick was an even better kisser when Gatsby was prepared. It took them a little while to get back to dinner, but they did eventually finish eating, and Gatsby walked Nick home, even though the distance was short. Nick kissed him goodbye, briefly on the doorstep, and then Gatsby was left to walk back to his mansion by himself. For the first time in months, he passed by the dock without stopping to gaze across the bay at the green light.
Aww.
The end. I got to tie it at the end. The metaphor that we were all taught in English class. The green light is love. The green light is Daisy. He didn't even look at it. It's almost as if he was compensating for something else with this love of a woman he could not get.
You know, it's a little on the nose.
That's not familiar to me at all.
No one would be aware.
No one will know that I'm gay if I say I'm in love with a man that's a celebrity or the popular guy that will never look at me. No one will know.
No one would know.
Speaking of high school.
Be like, I'm in love with the quarterback because I can be. And he doesn't know who I am.
I'd be like, I'm in love with like the clearly flamboyant gay man who I have a lot in common with because he also loves show choir and musicals. And people would be like, he's gay. And I'm like, yeah, that's just too bad, I guess. Man, we would have really been a great couple if he wasn't gay. Darn. Anyway, that was Steak Cabernet and the Blindingly Obvious by ConvenientAlias. Go check out their other stuff and leave comments if you enjoyed this pick. That was The Great Gatsby.
That was fantastic. It has made me lightly want to reread Gatsby, but also
it's one of the shortest classic books. So like if you want to return to that as a thing, like my wife is reading a lot of classic books that like we've glossed over and giving me reviews to know if I should read it also.
Sure.
And Gatsby feels like one that I could get through, especially knowing that it's like all drama.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of stuff to follow.
I feel like some of the appeal of it being part of literary education is probably like there's so many things happening that you can like really test whether or not someone read a chapter by being like, explain the green light. And then when they're like, it's a street sign, you're like, wrong.
I feel so bad for like teachers back when we were in high school because like the internet and like Spark Notes were really just becoming a thing.
Yep.
And so I remember being in like AP English and taking like tests, and obviously some of the questions were like, who said this quote, or like stuff to just be like, do you remember this book? And some of them were like these literary analyses of like the green light, but also Spark Notes would just be like, some people say the green light is a metaphor for blah, blah, blah. And you could just read that.
Yep.
So teachers had no way to be like, here's a test.
Be like, did you actually read it?
Or did you just hear someone else give their analyses? And also, should that count if it's not coming from your own brain? I don't know.
But also on some level, like, yes, one should read the original context, but like, also, I guess you're technically teaching like how to have a literary analysis instead of like,
which is really difficult to do. Fun fact.
I'm not
surprised.
Kids
don't want to read.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, even I assume with like AP kids, you'd be like, these kids like reading. That's why they're here.
Right.
And we were still bad at reading the book they told us to read. It was probably long and we had other homework to do.
Yeah. One of the things I remember from my English class is my teacher, when we read Catcher in the Rye, he had a picture of himself in a rye field. And then he had a secondary picture of himself in a rye field holding a catcher's mat.
That's
like,
funny.
so he was like
Catcher
out on
in the Rye.
Yeah, he was like out on a vacation and like saw a rye field and thought to himself,
I can make a good pun.
I can make a good pun.
Yeah.
And
that'll stick with you way better than anything that happened in Catcher in the Rye.
Right? Be like, we don't need to talk about how he grapples with his like inability to like consummate a relationship with a prostitute when we can remember that an English teacher
also,
took
we
a
were
picture
like
of field.
16, so like perhaps there would have been a more relevant like person in a book that we could be like, yeah, the qualms of growing up in like a normal way and not in a prostitute way. That's why you can't read old books. There's just weird, there's irrelevant problems to us. So obviously we're not going to care that much. Like I'm never going to have that problem. So like, I'm not going to want to study it. At 16. Maybe now.
When I was 16, I wasn't calling prostitutes and then chickening out at the last minute.
Right.
And like commenting on the fact that the prostitute like hung up her like Macy's dress.
But
wow,
also,
you really don't want to put a wrinkle in that, do you? And
but
she's
also,
like,
I really don't want to talk. I would really in class wouldn't want to talk about like the moral qualms of like me and my boyfriend deciding if we wanted to have sex, which would be a relevant problem, but I would not want to talk about it in front of other people. So like, there's really no right answer.
Whoa, do you think they like had Catcher in the Rye because we're like, we want to tell children that like sometimes you'll have moral qualms about sleeping with someone at the last second and it's okay to pull out at the last minute?
I hope so, but I don't think that's
There's no
correct.
way that was in the curriculum, but like I'm injecting it now.
Right?
Can you imagine getting your curriculum like binder and they're like, so we're teaching kids sex
That
positivity.
It's okay to back out.
We're teaching them the importance of consent by reading The Catcher in the Rye. And you're like, what?
Yeah, I feel like we didn't read Catcher in the Rye, but I feel like if that was a conversation we would have had, it might have stuck with me. I don't know.
Considering I didn't have that thought until literally 15 years later.
Until now. Yeah, now we can. You want to read Catcher in the Rye? Is it long? How many pages is it?
I don't know. Maybe
I'll read Catcher in the Rye. And then if I hate it, I'll have better reason to hate it. And
right?
if I don't, I'll be like, you know what? Actually, people are sleeping on Catcher in the Rye. Catcher in the Rye is like 230 pages.
But it's one of those like
Hell
little
yeah,
old books.
That's tiny.
Let's do it.
I can read that.
Let's do
That'll
it.
be my new Christmas read. I need a new
Gone Girl and Catcher in the Rye.
I need a new one. I've read Gone Girl enough times.
Every Christmas we read a different required reading.
That's under 300 pages. So I can do it sustainably in a month without feeling like I'm neglecting all my other books. Anyway, now that we've come full circle and talked about maybe 10 classic literature books, what are we doing next week?
Next week we have Lockdown.
Oh, interesting.
Like COVID-19 lockdown. Or at least that's kind of how I interpret
okay. Yeah,
it.
I was going to say, now that have some perspective, you could maybe go back and do a couple of different tags that are lockdown based.
Yes. Locked in an apartment.
Locked in, quarantine. Or for other reasons. Who knows?
Yes. There's a lot of wild ways to interpret this.
Okay, well, I'm excited to see which direction you went in.
Me too.
Very fun. All right. If you want to give us more classic literature recommendations that you've read in your adulthood, you can get in touch with us in so many ways. We have our email at findparingspodcast@gmail.com, and we have comments or DMs, depending on the platform, on TikTok, Tumblr, Facebook, not Snapchat, Instagram. I think that's it, at Fine Pairings Podcast, and Twitter at Fine Pairings Pod.
And if you would like to engage with us more, we also have a Patreon. For $5 a month, you can come over to our Patreon and listen to 2 additional episodes from Grace and I, where we read episodes. We read fanfics that are a little too smutty for the regular podcast.
If you don't want to give us money every month, but you do maybe if it's like a special occasion or you especially liked a certain episode, you just want to buy us a coffee or buy us a cocktail, you can pop over to our Ko-Fi, which is in all the different like bios of the social medias I've already talked about. Is that it? Oh, give us reviews.
Yes.
Those are free.
Yes. Give us reviews in Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, you can take a screenshot of that 5-star review and send it to our email at findpairingspodcast@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. And you can request your own 500-word custom fanfic that Grace or I will write and potentially read at the end of the season.
And have a good time. Continue to enjoy fanfic and books. Goodbye.
Goodbye.